Welcome to the last part of this presentation. This is the second part of part 5. In this part, we will talk more about the practice. So, in the last section, we established that the practice was now finding a balance while living in the apparent reality, having the knowledge of. So, a practitioner has to be very careful not to get confused with these two realities. So, for instance, the practitioner cannot live under the impression, well, there's no me, there's no you, there's only dependently arising phenomena, and be irresponsible. You have to be responsible and take care of your life and take care of your responsibilities, because we need this body and mind to become liberated. We need to continue our responsibilities while living in the apparent reality with the knowledge of the actual reality. Now, I heard this being explained beautifully by Ajahn Amaro of Amaravati Monastery in England. He said, keep one eye on apparent reality and one eye on actual reality, and ride a bicycle in the middle. So I thought that was a beautiful thing to say, and I wanted to share that with you here. So the practice becomes where you have to live with this understanding and develop wisdom. So again, I want to visit these 3 lines and look at them in detail, why we need to do this, refrain from the unwholesome, engage in what is wholesome, and to cultivate our mind. So avoid what is unwholesome, because unwholesome thoughts, speech, and actions disturb the mind. And such a mind can be likened to a pool of mud where there's no clarity. So in this situation, it is difficult for wisdom to arise, because consequences of such actions create unfavorable conditions for wisdom to arise. So then here is a picture of a pool of mud to remind you that there's no clarity there. And then engage in what is wholesome. Wholesome thoughts, speech, and actions help the mind. Such a mind is not disturbed and open to seeing things clearly. Such a mind will pick up on clues for wisdom to arise and develop. Consequences of wholesome actions create favorable conditions for wisdom to arise. There's no question that you and I have generated favorable conditions for wisdom to arise, because we have this precious human life and we have come in contact with the Buddha's teaching. So our work now is to make great gains in the practice and strive to develop wisdom every moment we can. Because coming in contact with the Buddha's teaching is a very rare thing, as the teaching is not always available. And then this is a picture of a clear pool. So that is not enough just to refrain from the unwholesome and engage in the wholesome. We must, in addition, calm the mind and investigate. So wisdom will arise in a calm mind. So that's why we develop mindfulness and concentration, and then wisdom will arise through this cultivation, and we will be able to see through apparent reality, just like through a glass of water we can see from one end to the other end. There will be that much clarity in a calm mind. So until wisdom is perfected, what should we do? So we should try to develop present moment awareness. And the Buddha has given many techniques in the Satipatthana Sutta, or the four foundations of mindfulness, on how to do this so that your mind is not scattered everywhere, because that is what it is used to doing, scattering all over, having these discursive thoughts, which will not be helpful in this process of wanting to gain insight. So I'm going to very superficially touch on some of these points that the Buddha has given in the Four Foundations of Mindfulness Sutta, and you can refer to this sutta for detailed explanations if you would like. So we must train our mind not to dwell in the past or the future, and this is present moment awareness, and to be aware of the present posture of the body. Train the mind to be aware of the present activities and sensations of the body, and pay attention and watch your mind. And try to see if you can figure out how the mind reacts when the senses contact the respective sense objects. So if you can aim to bring to mind the dependently arising nature of the sensory objects, and the five aggregates, then you are on a very good track towards liberation. Now let's try to see what are some possible scenarios that could happen when we see a flower. So we can say, there's a beautiful flower, I want it. Or that's a terrible flower, I must destroy it. Or you might just see a flower, recognize it, and be impartial to it. So these are the three situations that we talk about here. There is greed, there's a craving to get the flower, and then there's delusion. Why do we say there's delusion? Because it was forgotten that this is a dependently arising phenomenon of seeing that's happening here, and there isn't a subject-object duality. So there's delusion here because that was forgotten. And same here, there's delusion and hatred here. And here, although there's no greed and hatred, there is delusion because the flower was taken to be a flower, and there was a person here observing the flower. So then there's a fourth scenario, perhaps at the temple, you might contemplate on impermanence, that this flower is impermanent, dukkha, and callous. And although it is better than these three situations, there is still delusion because you've taken the flower to be a flower. Although you have contemplated on some Dhamma points, you haven't really hit the nail on the head because there's delusion there. So what is the best scenario? Is that when you see a flower, if you can stop at just the seeing. These are dependently arising phenomena coming together, the five aggregates coming together, assembling and reassembling, assembling and reassembling in quick succession. Then there is no greed, no hatred, no delusion. And that is the best at chipping away at ignorance. Now, Venerable Katakurunde Jnanananda Thero says, ignorance is just ignoring the truth, and the mind is just always used to ignoring the truth, and that is the whole problem we have here. And the Buddha said that the practice is going against the stream. So we have to swim upstream when the mind wants to just ignore the truth that this is what is happening. The mind would rather grab the flower and make up a bunch of stories about the flower and really buy into that magic show. The winning situation would be, if you can bring to mind as many times as you can that this, not only the object, the experience, and the experiencer are all illusory in this magic show, and that these are all dependently arising phenomena coming together. Knowing this intellectually is not enough. We have to see it with our mind's eye. So that is why we need to calm the mind and gain insight into this. When you develop this wisdom, you live with this understanding that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, dukkha, not self, and all dependently arising. Then you are no longer pulled by desire and pushed by aversion, because you are not fooled by delusion, and you will be much happier and peaceful because you know what's going on. Things don't sting you so badly anymore, and it just happens because your wisdom knows what's going on. And then every moment you live with this awareness, you are cultivating the factors needed for enlightenment. And these are called Bojjhanga Dhamma. And these are healing to both body and mind. And meditation should be aimed at seeing the dependently arising and passing nature of all conditioned phenomena. So you calm the mind, you settle the mind to see this, and that should be the aim of your meditation. This is the right meditation in the Noble Eightfold Path. Then I just want to mention two discourses that I came across that I think are really precious to the practice. In addition to the Foundations of Mindfulness discourse, you have this discourse given to Bahya Sutta. And this was a crash course the Buddha gave to this individual who was a highly determined person who had traveled the night before from a very far away location to meet the Buddha, and he was desperately wanting to learn the Dhamma. So he interrupted the Buddha 3 times while he was on his arms round, and although the Buddha declined to teach Dhamma at that time, Bahya persisted and said that either you, Lord, or I may pass away in a few minutes, so please teach me some Dhamma. So on the third request, the Buddha told him, well then, Bahya, thus should you train yourself. In the seen, there will be just the seen. In the heard, there will be just the heard. In the sensed, there will be just the sensed. In the cognized, there will be just the cognized. Thus should you train yourself. So this individual got this piece of information, and the Buddha is telling him, when you see, stop at the seeing. And then he followed up by saying, and when you do that, Bahya, there will be in the seen just the seen, and for all other senses as well, and in the cognized just the cognized. Then Bahya, you are not by it, and then Bahya, you are not in it, and when Bahya, you are not in it, then Bahya, you are neither here nor there nor in between. This itself is the end of suffering. So the Buddha said, when you do that, you will not have the subject-object duality and have these discursive thoughts happening of you seeing something and you cognizing something, and essentially the sense of self will be no more. And this crash course worked. Upon hearing these words, Bahia became enlightened. I suppose he was a spiritually mature person at this point, that he grasped everything and he became enlightened then and there. And the Buddha departed and went on his alms round. And shortly thereafter, Arahant Bahia was struck by a cow and he passed away, an enlightened person. We should make full use of this crash course. It is inspiring to us to bring this to mind. And then the other discourse is the Elimination of Tense, the Sabbasava Sutta. In this sutta, the Buddha says that there are 4 types of tense. What he's saying, describing by tense, are these mental habits that are sort of deeply seated in the mind. They brew over time, or they're sometimes called fermentations, that prevent us from seeing the truth. So, seeing things clearly. So, he gave 7 different methods to eliminate these taints. So, each type of taint can only be eliminated by a certain method, and he gave these methods in the Sabbasava Sutta. And finally, he said here, there are taints that should be abandoned by developing, and that he's referring to cultivation of the mind. The point I told you about developing Bojjhanga Dhamma, to see that the sensory contact, during the sensory contact process, what is happening is what meditation should be aimed at, he is saying here. So this sutta, my favorite exposition of this sutta is given by Venerable Pittigala Gunaratana Thero of Sri Lanka, and his sermon is in Sinhala, but fortunately a Dhamma friend has translated his sermon into English and made it available on a PDF that I found, that I can leave instructions on at the end of this presentation for you to access if you like. There's something extremely valuable in the way that Pittigala Gunaratana Thero explains this sutta. I would like to leave you with a few helpful resources that are freely available to you. And one is the Bhavana Society of West Virginia, where you will find discussions, sutta classes, and sermons by Venerable Hene Pula Gunaratana Thero, fondly known as Bante Ji, and he gives very clear explanations in simple language that we can understand. And then a second website, Seeing Through the Net, where you will find the works of Venerable Katukurunde Jnanananda Thero, where he has a set of comprehensive books and sermons analyzing deep suttas pertaining to the law of dependent origination. And I will put the links to these sites in the description below, along with a link to the PDF of the English translation of Venerable Pittigala Gunaratana Thero's exposition of the Sabbasava Sutta. I would like to thank everyone who helped me with this presentation and who encouraged me to record this presentation. In doing so, I had to study this content to the best of my ability so I could deliver it more fluently in this recording. And I am thankful to my friends who encouraged me to do this. And my heartfelt thanks to everyone who helped me with this project. And I would like to end this presentation by making this wish for everyone. May you grow in virtue, serenity, and wisdom. May all these components on the path be perfected, and may you attain the final goal without any delay. Thank you for joining me on this journey.